Section86.com. We're changing the world of podcasting one show at a time.
86 Productions.
Take what you wanna take. Don't you leave me here. Lasting leap years ever. Your fear of the one and only love.
Hello and welcome to Off the Mark, the best podcast providing the most in-depth insight and analysis into the world of professional wrestling. On today's show, we have Aaron, Roger, and Doug to join Anders. We discuss this month's View from the Turnbuckle. So let's real quick. I just want to let everyone know Butch Reed, he passed away. He was a famous wrestler in the WWE from 86 to 88. I just want to let everyone know about that. We're going to move on to the WWE Network is going to Peacock on March 21st. Now, Roger, is this going to get you excited to get the Peacock Network or the streaming app?
I mean, I have a network subscription. It's going to automatically kind of roll up into the Peacock, so I'll take a look at it. It definitely is something that I probably wouldn't have looked at before, and now because I already have one, I'll take a look. But just in general, there's so many streaming services that it's like, you know, it's hard to go through all of them. I think the big thing about this is if they're really furthering that partnership with NBC Universal, could we get a WrestleMania on NBC? Like that seems like one of those things like that would be a very big deal to have a Super Bowl-like event on a major network as opposed to just a network and pay-per-view. That could be a really big thing. So that's what I'm curious about.
You know, let's talk about that for a little bit. That's a great idea because you could actually have it on Peacock at first, and then you can say from 6 to 9 on Sunday they're gonna have 4 matches or whatever, and then say no commercials. That would be a huge deal, and I think NBC would be shocked about how many people turned in to watch a WrestleMania, especially. Wow, that's a great idea. You know, Doug, what are your thoughts on the fact that WWE Network is moving to Peacock?
I think it's a good idea. It's one way that you can, I guess, I don't want to say fudge numbers, but you can claim that all these people are now subscribers to the WWE, even though they're probably just subscribed to Peacock. For the people that do own or have been getting the WWE Network, due to the fact that if you want, you can lower it down to the $5 mark per month instead of the $10 a month, and you still get a whole bunch of other shows that NBC produces. My biggest question is, now that they have the network, does that mean that Raw, being a USA product, can go on the network live, or will it be something a little bit sooner broadcasted? Since there isn't, I mean, they're only competing against themselves at that point. I would imagine Fox would still be, or SmackDown might be another month before they get them on the network. But that's what I would like to see, is if they actually did do that they put it up there right away and make it accessible for those who can't watch it during the live stream.
Yeah, and Aaron, what do you think about that? Like the fact that now WWE Network is moving to Peacock. Is there anything that you're looking forward to?
You know, I think having all that in one location is really nice. One of the problems, I think, with all these streaming services that we run into is when you want to watch a show, where do you go to? You know, like, oh, wait, this is a CBS show, so it's CBS All Access. And then you're like, okay, well, where do I get The Office again? I forgot where that's at, or I want to watch Friends. It's all over the place, and there's just so many options to choose from, which is a good thing for the consumer. But at the same time, you go, well, why do I have to have these in all these different areas? Why can't we consolidate that ever so slightly? And so I'm really happy WWE is going to the Peacock Network. And there's some nice things. If you do have Comcast, you do get it for free, or you get the
$5 version.
Yeah, for free, which is pretty nice. You know, I really like that, because the other thing too is also with the network, there was months, there's probably like a good 6 months where I had it and I only watched the pay-per-view and nothing else. And then I actually forgot and I missed some pay-per-views, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm already paying for this. I was paying, $20 and I didn't even use it at all. So the fact that I don't have to worry about it is really nice. And I think even as a shareholder, a 10 shareholder with WWE, I really like that idea, because I think that it will increase their value in the marketplace.
Now, Roger brought up a point earlier where he said that, hey, why don't we do something where, like WWE is on NBC, like for like WrestleMania, we'll say. Do you think that's like something that WWE should probably push for or explore at least?
I would be totally to have the biggest event of the year, the Super Bowl of wrestling on a major network. Absolutely. You can promote that thing and just go nuts with it. I think that would be fantastic. If anything else, you might get some people into wrestling, and this is your opportunity. You are now selling wrestling to people that have not watched wrestling in a very long time. So I'm 100% in favor of something like that.
Now, Doug, what did you think about did beat Bill Goldberg, and what were your thoughts on the match?
It definitely loses credibility as a champion. I think there was a lot of relief of wrestling fans once he actually did get the 1, 2, 3. It was very much what I expected to be, which was going to be the finisher spam, just like any other WrestleMania match or any match that Goldberg has been involved in recently. So overall, it was a decent match. Drew a little bit more credibility and moves the plot line logically.
I'm not going to say anything about the match was good because it was the standard Goldberg finisher. Like, I legitimately don't think there was a move executed that wasn't a finisher. It just seemed like it was spear, claymore kicks, and a jackhammer, which, you know, that's fine for a 2-minute slugfest. But Drew McIntyre is not limited as a wrestler, and I don't believe you need to put him in these type of matches. You know, Braun Strowman, that kind of makes sense. He's an okay wrestler. Drew McIntyre can put on really good matches. And also, Goldberg is just, this isn't the Goldberg of the 90s. This isn't Goldberg of the early 2000s. This is Goldberg in 2021. I don't want to see him in title matches. If you want to bring him out as a special attraction, so be it. But I think McIntyre, there are better matches to be had with opponents that could have used a push. And I think McIntyre's in that spot to elevate someone like a Keith Lee or, you know, any of the litany of guys who absolutely need this kind of push. Aleister Black, I don't know where he went. I just think there's better options, but I'm glad that McIntyre won. There was absolutely a sigh of relief when he won.
Yeah, and you can just sweep it. I'm in total agreement. Now, Andy, though, you are a huge Goldberg mark. Were you sighing relief, or were you like, man, I really want Goldberg to get that one more win?
Yeah, I figured, he's what, 50 now? Yeah, he could probably do it again. No, I mean, he was in decent shape, don't get me wrong, but like at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, it took, you take away spots from either a tag team or maybe a singles push that's going on. Why do this? Or I would have been more entertained if R-Truth came out and they did another segment with him with the 24/7 title. I would have been happy with that, but whatever.
Actually, let me ask you something, Andy, because Drew McIntyre now is going to defend his title in the Elimination Chamber. Do you think that's a good move for them to do that?
I can't believe Elimination Chamber is coming back. What's the point?
They do it every year, though.
But I thought they moved it, though. I thought that they stopped doing it in February, or I might be wrong. I thought that for some reason I thought they moved it, but at some point I think over it is what I think boils down. Cool. Let's move on. But and plus people aren't like trying to hurt themselves while they're in there anymore like they used to. But crap happens.
Doug, do you think that Drew of losing his title in the Elimination Chamber, do you think they're going to move it to somebody else and have that be a main event? Or is this just like, another test of his, essentially?
I think overall it's just another test to show how strong he is and build him up even more credibility. Whether or not it's Edge versus McIntyre at WrestleMania or whether this is their chance to take the title off McIntyre just so that Edge has more of a heel versus face dynamic. Kind of feels maybe that way a little bit more, or it's just trying to everything seems so day to day with their booking, so who knows what they're thinking right now.
And Roger, I think, and Doug kind of, jumped the shark there by letting us know Edge won the Royal Rumble. What did you think when Edge came out number one overall? One of three people, by the way, to win from number one overall. And he wins it all at, he's like 48 years old or so. What did you think?
One of three people, one of which is Shawn Michaels. Don't know who the other guy is. Yeah, I like Edge. I enjoyed Edge during his Ultimate Opportunist phase. Watching him beat the Money in the Bank back in 2005, 2006 was super great. But that was 15 years ago. I don't know. There's something a bit concerning, I guess, in my eyes, of having Edge, who's wrestled, 2 matches since coming back, was retired for 9 years, but is able to go the distance from one to the end. A feat that literally has only been accomplished by Shawn Michaels, He Who Shall Not Be Named. Brock Lesnar, the most dominant superstar ever, maybe, in the company, couldn't even do it, but Edge could. That's weird. Second, I don't see where he fits. Edge versus Balor. That would be a fun match. I don't know that the storyline it makes sense. Edge versus Roman. That could be fun. I don't know that it fits all that well. Edge versus McIntyre. I don't know that you want to put Drew McIntyre in the middle of his babyface run against comeback story against Edge. That really doesn't fit to me. So part of me actually kind of thinks going to the Elimination Chamber point that Orton might win. I could see Drew dropping the title in the Chamber, because right now I don't know that I see a clear path for Edge in the main event. So this is a good way to create him one, but it's a very odd choice to me. I don't know that I would have booked Edge to win the Rumble from 1. Especially when he's literally the ultimate opportunist. That is odd.
Yeah, I this is one of those weird things where still, what's the point of Edge winning? That I guess that's my concern. I'm happy that he won, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, what I don't know. What was the point? That are up and comers that could have done this, but oh well.
Though, to maybe get Edge to beat Drew in a long, hard-fought match, only to have Miz cash in and take it from Edge so that he doesn't have to necessarily. That's my reaction too. I don't necessarily want that, but what are they going to do with the Money in the Bank thing? Mm-hmm. It's so long, and they don't have people in place because they're building up Roman Reigns, and they're building up Drew McIntyre to be these end boss levels that nobody else can beat. You had the shot. You took it with the triple threat aspect and the ladder match. They should have just ended it there. I thought that was a logical conclusion that didn't make Miz look totally weak. But now you gave it back to him, and it's like, okay, is he going to be the first person to lose it twice in a year, or what's happening? Do you really want to put the title on Miz right now?
So can I say I kind of think Miz is going to be the first Money in the Bank winner to cash in on another Money in the Bank winner? I think that's where they're going with this. I think he's going to wait to the night of.
And then that person will cash in, and he'll cash in on top of them?
I mean, if you think about it from a strategic standpoint, what a better way to make sure that you don't lose your championship than to cash in over top the previous Money in the Bank winner and secure yourself no threat of the Money in the Bank for the next year. It kind of makes sense in storyline. And I don't know what else to do. The WrestleMania cash-in has already been done. They didn't cash in during the Rumble. This seems like the next logical step to cash in over top another the Money in the Bank winner.
Edge did get one of his titles through an Elimination Chamber win.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
the one where he stole it from Kofi?
Yeah. Or was it? No. Edge beat Cena, I think.
That was after
Cena won the
Yeah, he survived the Chamber. Edge beat him. Edge, I think, won a championship another way when he attacked Kofi before the match, stole his spot. I think Edge lost a title in the Chamber to start the night, came out later, attacked Kofi, stole his spot, and then won the different championship that same night. So it was very weird. Mm-hmm. So he has a history with Chamber matches, obviously.
Yeah, so who knows what we'll see with that. Edge winning, I definitely echo your guys' thoughts. Now, Andy, I believe you did not pick her. You were one of the you for whatever reason didn't go with the group, but men's Royal Rumble. What were your thoughts on that?
Happy about it. I think it's about time. She is an up and comer, and I think she has a good 10 years, quality 10 years in her. So it would not surprise me. This was a no-brainer. I mean, at this point, but you never know. Some people may. I really thought at one point, I thought Nia Jax was going to win, but apparently her hold was not strong enough. So, Aaron, what did you think about Bianca's win? And by the way, what's EST stand for again?
Wow. Wow. Andy, how did tiebreakers work? So for Bianca winning, I picked that. So obviously, like I had a horse in the race where I was like, yes, she's going to do it. And I thought that the ending was really well done, to have comers with Charlotte, and all three of them could have won. That was the thing. I think everybody was like, all three of these women could potentially win and main event, which is what you want with your like final four, your final like 6 people. You want it to be people where you're like, you don't want to have Stevie Richards in there. No offense, Stevie. I know you listen. But you don't want to have somebody in there where you're like, yeah, there's no chance that they're gonna win this. And I felt like all three, you really could have seen, okay, where are they going to go with this? And with Charlotte, she could have a feud with Asuka potentially. Same thing with Rhea Ripley. She could, go back to NXT. She could have go after Asuka, or Charlotte could win and then go after Charlotte. There's a lot of different possibilities. And Bianca, somebody who's up and coming, they've obviously put a spotlight on her. She's been in some high profile matches, beats Bayley. When after joining the SmackDown roster, I know she'd been there for a little while, but she was lost in the shuffle. But they obviously believe in her, and so they're going to do things with her, which I like, and I'm happy with that. I think you do needs to get away from the 4 horsewomen.
Yeah. So this is still a good decision by WWE. I'm just curious, Roger, what do you think about the fact that she was able to win?
I love it. I think it's a fantastic idea. To echo Aaron's point, you can't just rely on the horsewomen and Asuka. It just cannot be them. You need to build other people. You need to utilize their star power. You need to have, if you want this roster to be one of the best, you need to see the same old matches. I've seen every iteration of the horsewomen going at each other, face and heel. So Bianca versus Asuka is interesting. Bianca versus Sasha is interesting. Bianca versus Io is interesting. It's like the opposite of the men's rumble. I'm excited about all 3 possibilities. It makes sense. I love the final 3 for a couple reasons. It's a callback to last year's feud when Bianca, Charlotte, and Rhea were all feuding. They eliminated Charlotte, so it doesn't make her look weak by any means. She lost to 2 up-and-comers, and then Rhea and Bianca went at it. It reminds me very much of Rock versus Austin or Cena versus Batista, where you kind of saw the 2 stars of the division of the future going at it for a Rumble win. I love it. It's really good thing. I hope she wins at Mania. I don't want her to get lost in this Nakamura shuffle where she wins the Rumble and that's her only accomplishment, because it's always a risk. But I think she's a future star of this division, so I hope she gets the rocket strapped to the moon. And I hope she faces Io. I hope she beats Io, to be quite honest.
On the whole, I think the women's wrestling match was pretty good.
Just want to make sure that it was on a whole good. Okay.
Yep.
And Doug, is that your whole statement?
Yeah, I think I'm going to just end it right there. I think I got my whole point across.
Oh my God.
All right. So let's talk TNA and the fact that AEW and them have a pretty decent relationship, because the TNA champs actually showed up on Wednesday Night Dynamite. So, Doug, what did you think?
Back to the end of the year, not necessarily predictions or anything, but our choice and everything. This is just still more to add to that whole Thanos aspect, or just the companies merging and everything together. To see the TNA tag champs show up on AEW, far-fetched, after Omega went over to TNA. It's quite amazing to see, even more though, that you have more than just Omega Bullet Club kind of thing. You now have Private Party going over to TNA with Matt Hardy to do some matches over there. So it's not just a one and done thing in my book. You're going to start seeing a little bit more cross promotions and everything like that. It'll be interesting, but not necessarily out of the realm of possibility that they eventually do a versus pay-per-view, which I think would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that too. what you had said before about like all these people coming together, almost like Voltron or like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, right? Like you have all these people coming together to take on WWE in a way. I will say I am more interested now in AEW and in TNA even, and in JPW, because when you get to have this cross promote, you're probably not going to see the big stars, but Private Party showing up on TNA, like that actually kind of makes sense. Like they feel like a TNA tag team. So that's kind of cool. And it's not like these people are foreign to each other, right? Like they've been there's some cross pollination that's there. And so these people, we know who they are. And it's really cool to see a different person that's with a different group in there. And it's like, what? Wait, what? Why are they showing up? It's Batman and a Spider-Man comic book. It's very different. And I really like it. I'm very interested in the stuff that's going on. I watched AEW the other night, and to see, the Good Brothers on there, and to see Kenta and them, like that was just such a shocker to me. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it to see all the cross promotions that were there.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of echo that point, it's something that we've dreamed of and talked about, but usually you get a watered down version. If you think back to the WCW invasion, where it's like, it's not really WCW, that's WWF's version of WCW. But I mean, this is legitimately NJPW having a star show up in AEW. This is that we have always dreamed of, because the possibilities become infinite. And we've seen it, I guess, before with All Out, but that felt very different because that felt like a special. This feels like an agreement and a deal, and hopefully a different way of doing wrestling. Because look, the WWE's got its own infrastructure and ecosystem, and they don't care about anybody else, and that's fine. It's obviously working very well for them. But for everybody else, it's fun. And it's making AEW more appealing. It's making TNA or Impact worth watching potentially. It makes NJPW, they obviously are going to always struggle in getting their making expansion without the Bullet Club and Cody and all those guys. If you've got the ability to send a guy like Okada or Jay White or Kenta or whoever you want to and get live exposure on Wednesday night on TNT, that's big. So I think only good things can come of this. My only question will always be, who's in charge? Whose guys go over? Who wins? The wrestlers have to get along, but it's easy to say, okay, AEW is clearly helping out Impact, so their guys are probably going to go over for the most part, except for maybe the Good Brothers and things like that. But when you bring in JPW into the mix, I don't think they're going to bow to AEW. They see themselves as an equal, if not superior. So you've got to get through that. And I think they can. It's just going to be very interesting, because we've seen in the past those things can cause hang-ups and people pulling out of matches and things like that.
Yeah, and actually, Roger, to your point, Doug, with as I had mentioned earlier, Kenta, showing up on AEW and, attacking Moxley, Kenta's, one of their aces. So he is probably going to be going over 99% of the roster, wouldn't you say? Like, and even, he has a match with Moxley coming up. There's probably a good chance that he's could even beat Moxley, which is one of their stars.
Well, I always knew that Moxley had the U.S. title over in New Japan, and that was something that was before he even signed with AEW, I think, was already in the works, but unfortunately, due to COVID, things got moved around and travel plans got changed and everything. So Moxley showing up at NJPW wasn't necessarily the biggest thing, I didn't think, because I thought that was more of I need to fulfill this contract and things are open now to do it. Let's go over there and do that. Having Kenta show up on AEW, I think, was absolutely huge. Kenta is one of their big guys, so I do like this a lot in the aspect that, I think he will come over and he will be put over quite a bit, even on AEW. They just had a tag match where it was Omega and Kenta versus Moxley and Archer, and really good hardcore match. But eventually it was Omega over Archer. So that's one of the ways, though, that you can stop it from being a NJPW person not pinning an AEW person, because you still have the AEW people pinning themselves. So there are ways to save, I guess, I don't want to say save face, but there's ways to save it and make it so that it's not a loss, because even if, let's say, Moxley would have gotten pinned, or not Moxley, but if Omega would have been pinned, it still stops Kenta from taking the loss technically. So There's ways around the who takes the loss and how and what is needed, but you can also probably predict some 50-50 booking in the near future where it's maybe Kenta loses at AEW, but Moxley loses at New Japan Wrestling. So some of that could also come into effect.
Yeah, I still think that the way that they had this relationship set up is still unique, but you know, we've seen that a lot of wrestlers, it's a 50-50 game most of the time. So I'm wondering, is it going to turn out where they just trade and then it's not as, because to me, I think trading is not as a big of a deal. I think if they had if one side had one win above the other, I think that might do, I don't know. I think that would maybe bring bragging rights to the subject.
WWE pay-per-view. Copyrighted.
My hole.
Wow. I had to think about that for a second. I was like, what is he talking? Oh.
Yep.
So we also have the NXT TakeOver pay-per-view Vengeance coming up. There are some pretty big matches. Actually, this is one of the, I know they only do so many takeovers a year, but this is one where I feel like all of them are all really good matches. Men's match, the women's Dusty Rhodes, the men's Dusty Rhodes, the tag team, American, and then of course the NXT Championship. Andy, is there one match in particular that you are most excited for?
I don't know. I kind of like watching Pete Dunne wrestle. Him and Finn, I think, could probably go. I mean, I think I think for the NXT Championship, I would have to go with that, with Finn and Pete going at it. I think that's going to be a great match. So that would be my one that I would pick. Doug, what would be yours?
I think I'm going to go with Johnny Gargano versus Kushida. I think Kushida in NXT has been underutilized with all the talents that he has and experience that he has. So seeing Johnny NXT going against Kushida, I think will probably match it to Finn Balor versus Pete Dunne.
I am actually excited for the Dusty Road Classic Finals. I think both of those tag matches could be real good, especially the men's match. I have MSK before, but from what I've seen, they're very good. I love the Grizzled Young Veterans. They're really, really good. Ember Moon has always been one of my favorites. Shotzi's really good. I enjoy the team of Gonzalez and Kai, so I think both those matches could be really fun.
Yeah, and I actually echo your thoughts. MSK, who I'd never seen or heard of before, Wesley has so much. Definitely a standout. I think that Nash Carter from MSK is okay. Far be it from me to tell somebody that they should maybe shape up a little bit, but he looks fairly normal, and he should maybe chisel himself a little bit to be on the same level as Wes. But,
are you saying he's the Genetti of the group?
You know what? He could be a coward. I don't know. Haven't seen him jump through any windows recently. So I don't.
Will you stop?
So, but yeah, MSK. I actually agree. They're very exciting to watch, and I think that's really cool to see them. And their match with the Grizzled Young Veterans. I actually thought it might go the other way, and they'd fight Ciampa, and that way you have this really up and coming, this brand new tag team, and then you have these grizzled veterans, so to speak, going after them. But all top to bottom, I think that this is going to be a really good pay-per-view. I'm really looking forward to watching it. And, hopefully wife won't be upset. After we go out, we have a nice Valentine's Day dinner. I tell her, sorry, babe, but NXT's on. So, I got to watch.
I can't wait to see Aaron's St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Luckily I have to work.
All right. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to NXT this Sunday, and I think it's at 6 if I'm correct, something like that, 6 Central Time. Anyways, so let's thank our sponsor, HostGator. Are you a blogger or a podcaster, or you're just not happy with your web hosting? You want to check out HostGator.com. You're going to find web hosting made easy and affordable. HostGator offers unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click script installs with a free site hands on the best control panel out there. Stop by today and try free demo to see how easy it is. And if you use special coupon code OFFTHEMARK, you're going to save 25% off your web hosting packages. So what do you got to lose? Check out HostGator.com and take a bite out of your web hosting costs. Also, make sure you just click on the banner at the top to see big items from wshop.com. Aaron, we are doing, what are we calling it, the Heisman Award?
Yeah, so at the end of the year, we do our end of year awards, right? And we decided to kind of do something a little little different this year when we had done them. And we were saying, okay, who are your top 10 men, women, and tag teams of the year? And so we put them down in order of, here who I think is the number one, and here's who's number 10. And it was really fascinating. The men's were a little bit over the place. Women's and tag team were a little more compact. But we thought it'd be interesting to kind of go through some of them and talk about some of the surprises. So I guess let's start off with the women's. We went back and forth, I know, for this past year where we had Sasha and we had Bayley for our 1 and 2 between. Amazingly enough, it was the exact same thing. We had them as our number 1 and 2, but more of us had Sasha Banks. And so what we did was if you were the number 1 person, you got 10 points. If you were number 10, you got 1 point, and obviously down the order. And so Sasha Banks ended up getting 38 points. So out of a possible 40 for us, which was really crazy. And then Bayley, number 2, was 36. Now, Roger, were there any on the list there that you see that, kind of surprised you a little bit? Was there anyone that you were like, oh, wow, they were much higher than I thought it would be? Or, I would have expected them to get a few more than that.
I think the women's kind of broke the way that I expected it to. Sasha and Bayley really stood out more than I kind of thought. You had Asuka and Io in that tier underneath. If I'm correct, I think Hikaru Shida was maybe the one who scored a little bit lower than I anticipated. But even that wasn't like a massive surprise because I just felt like the other 4 had, done really well. So, yeah, I think Sasha getting, a 38 out of 40, which is an insanely high score when you think that's basically all but 2 points. And she earned it, and she was fantastic this year. I think we were much more consistent in our voting of the women's and the grouping, so no surprises in my opinion on that side.
Yeah. And then what about you, Doug? Was there any that stood out?
No, I think this one kind of fell in line pretty well. It was no surprise to see the top 4 and who they were. You can almost say that for any year that those 4 were going to be in the top 4. So it was pretty, I don't want to say by the numbers, but a very, very close race for the top 3 people. And the fact that Asuka finished with 33 points. So she wasn't even very far behind Sasha and Bayley.
Yeah, and I think to your point, too, 38, 36, 33, and then Charlotte was 23, so it was a big drop-off from there. Now, kind of similarly, the tag team of the year, so we ended up going with Young Bucks with 39, which means that 4 of us, picked them as our number 1, and 1 was number 2. So, Andy, Young Bucks, 39 points, FTR 37, and then, you have a 10-point drop-off there to 28 for Undisputed Era. Were there any that you saw that were like, oh, wow, that's interesting?
Not really. I guess, well, no, I think that's about right. Maybe I would have liked to see Street Profits and the New Day up there, but if you look at WWE product, you have them, and then you have Undisputed Era and NXT. Of course, AEW, you have multiple tag teams up there. We have, three of the 4 tag teams, top tag teams, are from AEW, if that tells you anything. So, but, yeah.
And what about you, Doug?
It's not really much of a surprise for me. AEW's had some great tag team matches, and overall, probably the better of the top tier wrestling programs. Their tag teams have just been showcased and highlighted and everything like that. So it wasn't a surprise to see that they mostly took the top 4, with Undisputed Era being an NXT product, getting in the number 3 slot.
All right. And Roger, how about you?
Yeah, kind of same thing. If you kind of look at the women's, you can see where the best division is. You look at the tag division, you know where the best division is, and it's AEW, and then it's followed by NXT. And, so look, 3 people had the Young Bucks at the top. I had FTR at the top and the Young Bucks second from the top. So it isn't much of a surprise when you look at how good and how deep the AEW division is that they've been able to put on really great matches. And ironically, the top 2 teams didn't really have what I would call a classic match against one another, but it's their great matches throughout the rest of the year against everybody else, including, obviously I think we may have swept this as the match of the year, but the Bucks versus Hangman and Omega was just so good.
Yeah, and I think the storylines that they're put into was just really great. And then moving on to our men, so in looking at through our top 5, it was close. It was a lot closer. We actually ended up going with Jon Moxley as our number 1 with only 33 points. So a little bit different than the 39 and 38 that we had for the women's and the tag team. But even kind of going down the list, we had Roman Reigns with 30, Drew McIntyre with 24, Omega with 23, and then Seth Rollins with 20. Doug, with that list, was it kind of surprised to see Moxley that high, or maybe Seth Rollins that low? Was there anything even within the top 5 or a little bit further down that were surprising to you?
I just think that this went into a large cast of some really good wrestling and some really good wrestlers this year. Just the fact that I don't think any of us really agreed on who the true number 1 wrestler was of the year. So seeing the scores a little bit lower, I think is a good thing that more people are enjoying different aspects of wrestling and different people in the wrestling and the different top guys, I guess, of all the promotions.
And then Andy, how about you? Was there somebody that stood out that was maybe outside the top 5 that you thought should have gotten a few more points other than The Miz?
You know what the weird? Yeah, I mean, The Miz should have had like 40. No, you know what the weird part is? We went AEW, WWE, WWE, AEW, WWE, AEW, AEW, WWE, WWE, NXT. That's pretty. I still think that's interesting that we didn't like stay with one AEW the entire time, or NXT or WWE. That says that there's some really great wrestling out there. So yeah, I guess Roman being up there, but of course he's been decent. He's been in there. So
come on now.
I'm not gonna.
He's been the focus of SmackDown.
He has truly turned his character around.
I mean, it's the most fascinating thing on SmackDown, in my opinion. But.
So I think Andy does bring up a good point about Roman, and this is why I didn't rank him that high. And the same thing even with Naito is that he was gone half the year, right? It just, he was the one that stood out to me. It was like and we've had this discussion, Becky and Shayna. If you are not present or you are bad for half of the year, I have a hard time saying that you're the wrestler of the year unless everything else sucked. And as these lists show, there's a lot of good wrestling going on from single stars, right? Kenny Omega was another one who, I think is phenomenal, but he was a tag team for 9 to 10 months of the year. So that one surprised me. And I don't think either one of those are bad choices per se. It just wasn't the direction I would have went. But man, we're all over. I had MJF a second. I think he doesn't even show up on anybody else's list. I see, Roman actually, oddly enough, got the most consistent scores. He's pretty much around the 6 to 7 range, and then he's got one top vote. Cody Rhodes is kind of on the bottom of everyone's list. I'm surprised Hangman didn't score that well. That surprised me a little bit. But my argument was that he was in a tag team, so I just didn't really think he was a singles competitor that much. But I think this is a good sign for how diverse the quality of wrestling has been. It's not just, a list of 10 WWE and NXT guys. You've got AEW guys, you've got NJPW guys, you've got, obviously you've got your WWE people, but this was much more interesting to see this vote than, let's say, the women or the tag, where you kind of knew who it was going to be between. There was 4 to 5 people who could have won the 2020 award, and I think that's a very good thing. That means it's interesting and it's exciting. There's not a runaway. Whereas if we'd have done this last year, I think Adam Cole would have scored 40 out of 40. I don't think anybody would have probably voted Cole not at the top. Whereas this year there was no clear-cut answer, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think also to your point, even just looking at some of the other options right now, I think for 2021, this is going to be a really interesting list because we've had so much cross-pollination with NJPW, because Kenta is somebody that, not that he wasn't on my radar, but, I wasn't thinking about him, right? I wasn't thinking about NJPW at all. But now that's going to be a conversation. Impact as well. The Good Brothers are going to be on the tag team list. I don't even think that they didn't make it on any of ours. And right now, maybe a top 5, maybe a top 18, they will be on our list for next year. They probably may not crack the top 5, in total, but they will still be on there, which is going to be very different. So we're going to see, I don't know, I think the list next year, I could see the men's actually being a little more constricted in a way, because, Omega and Moxley, they could very easily be, the top 3 or top 4. Whereas WWE, I don't know, depends on what they do with Drew McIntyre, as we talked about earlier, who knows? and it might be another AEW centric, for the top brass there.
I think with NJPW though, having a full year under their belt, they really went into lockdown with the COVID thing. To Roger's point of, if you don't wrestle for half a year, you kind of get left in the dust. So with them being back, Kenta obviously he jumped up quite a bit on my top singles men's wrestlers list. Seeing what he does, but Nato and Okada probably are going to start creeping back up again and having 5-star matches month after month. So
Kota Ibushi, like for those who watched Wrestle Kingdom, he had 2 really good matches.
Yeah,
really
that was
good
really
matches.
good.
Well, and Okada too, if he shows up in AEW, that will be something. That will be something. I hope that he does. I really do, because he was at All In, I want to say, but he was a wrestle, but it was just a who's gonna win.
It was a true one-off, but yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I think it was very interesting to do kind of the Heisman style thing for who we thought was the best. PWI does their top 500. I kind of feel like that's a little much. Like, who cares if you're 472 versus 478, right? Like, whatever. I mean,
That
it's
person
really
does.
I'm sure that they do, right?
I'm sure the person who's 501 cares.
Yeah, right. But I mean, realistically, like maybe top 100, you might. And then for us, it's just like, look, who is your top 10, and then let's just make an amalgamation of it, put it together, and see what we came up with. And we might do this again. We might adjust the scoring system. But, the way that we did it this time, we just did 10 working backwards. And I think it worked out really well. And being able to see with the women and the tag team, you see who was the best. So you see when you get a score of 38, you're like, oh, I understand this. Or 39, who knows? Maybe next year somebody gets a score of 40 and it's like, oh, yeah, no, there was not even a question that it was CM Punk's year when he came back in Chicago, because that's going to happen. We know that.
That's never going to happen. CM Punk's done.
Let me ask you guys something here. Comparing going forward do you think that some of these were hurt by the lack of crowd? Because 2020 was the only year that was split. So if you look at, for example, the tag team, that match of the year was probably not going to be topped just because it's really hard to have a match that is better with a crowd reaction like that than it is without. Do you think that there could be a massive shift by just, okay, everyone's going to be wrestling under the same format for the most part, which is going to be no crowds or very limited crowds? I know WrestleMania is going to have a crowd, but that might be the only crowd of the year. I think NJPW is doing very limited crowds. AEW, I believe Impact is completely non-existent with crowds. Be a huge turnaround. And do you think some people are hurt by this, whether it's a Darby Allin, or do you think the Bucks, or, are there people who really benefit or suffer from crowd interaction?
Oh, I'll flat out say it. I think Drew McIntyre, him winning at winning the WWE Championship, I actually think that if it was live crowds, it might be different. But the fact that it was, COVID, completely different champion. So, and I think he would have done better if there was a crowd there, because he could feed off the crowd and they can decide, is he going to go face or heel? But if you want to look at it a different way, Roman Reigns would not be considered to be even in the top 5 or 10 at this point, but no crowd has improved him.
I think that no crowd actually even hurts Roman Reigns, because in his heel turn, everybody's been booing him already. Just getting even louder boos just proves that they made the right choice in making him a heel. One of the things I've noted with AEW, though, is that they've even said that they've been trying to hold off on some of the debuts, i.e. Sting. I think that was a debut that really hurt, not having a large crowd there. But now that they are starting to get some crowds, you can get tickets to AEW. You can buy boxes, I believe is what they're selling, so that you can bring a group of your family or close net friends that you still have to do the COVID testing and everything, but they're starting to sell some tickets to attend the shows and the Dynamite, but dark tapings. So I think we're going to start returning to a little bit more normalcy the more the vaccines get out and the more regulations start to get a little bit more dropped, we'll start to see a little bit more and more and more. So, I mean, I think the Super Bowl was a good kind of indication of how affecting things. The fact that they had the smallest crowd for a Super Bowl, but yet probably the largest crowd for a football game this whole season. So things are changing, and I think they're getting a little bit better, but only time will tell.
Well, yeah, and I think, I definitely agree with all you guys' sentiments. I do think that WrestleMania having a crowd, it will make whatever match is on there will probably be one of our matches of the year, until we get back to a normal crowd atmosphere. As we talked about before, at Revolution 2020, having the crowd there made that match even better. It was a 5-star match just in general, but having the crowd there and having people be like, when you hear that reaction, it just makes it so much more. And I think at WrestleMania this year, whatever matches they have, I actually kind of feel like we don't have matches set in stone yet, which is odd, and probably a good thing. But there's going to be some match that we're going to see and we're going to be like, oh, that was amazing. Like, that is my match of the year right now. Every other match is going to be compared to this one. And we're going to come up with that most likely, I assume, at WrestleMania. But as things move along and progress, we're going to have some matches that maybe are a 4-star match that might get up to 4.5 or, even up to a 5 because of the crowd interaction. And it also allows the wrestlers, because they're hearing the crowd, so they know, do I go faster? Do I go slower? Do I bring it back in a little bit and like kind of have the crescendo where we have the big move and then, yes, finally, like he got the title or he was able to get one over on him. So having the crowd there, you are going to hear the reaction, and that is going to make a match. That's going to add a star to the match. I think the crowd does, if not more.
Let me add a follow-up question to this. Do you think Japan has an advantage based on how their crowds are naturally more quiet anyway, and therefore we've been accustomed to hearing great matches with long periods of silence, like, for example, Omega Okada, where the crowd is silent and watching it and then cheers at the appropriate time, as opposed to the WWE NXT, even, American version of crowd just goes wild?
I'd say that Japan was actually even turning. The crowd reaction was getting a little bit louder and louder and louder each year. It's definitely more noticeable during the Wrestle Kingdom pay-per-view, but they were starting to get into it a little bit more and more and more, and I thought it became a little bit more commonplace for them to cheer during the match. But you do have a good point in the aspect that, yeah, they were used to being quiet and everything like that. They have a set storyline, I guess, in their own, in the aspects that the wrestling is the storyline. They don't really do too many promos to set up their matches. But maybe they had a little bit more advantage, but I don't know. I also think the lack of being able to see it here in America right now is also a hindrance to them.
Yeah, I agree. And, even when they show like, at WrestleMania last year, or not WrestleMania, but like Royal Rumble, let's say, and you see the crowd there and then you see the reactions and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I missed that. I think that Japan, they may have a slight advantage over that. Even like seeing Jay White when he had his big, he had attacked, I forgot who it was, but he had attacked somebody winning the 6-man tag championships. And, the crowd was very upset with him, and, you see him cutting a very scathing promo. But, somebody like him, he's able to thrive because he has that crowd reaction there. Whereas right now, you have Roman Reigns who comes out and he talks, and, he is used to the boos, but they're piped in. The Goldberg chants are piped in. It might have been different if there was a crowd. The crowd might have crapped all over Goldberg. They might have been like, oh, yeah, it's cool. We get to see Goldberg. And then it's like, wait, oh, you're going against Drew? Mm-mm. Boo, boo. And maybe that's not the reaction WWE wants. Honestly, probably for WWE, this is like their godsend because they get to choose who gets cheered and who gets booed, But you're not going to get the organic, presentations that, you would get elsewhere. I will always go back to in Seattle, there were multiple times, but one I just thought about in particular was Elias and Owens. Elias makes a crack about a basketball team, and for like 3, 5, 10 straight minutes, it's nothing but boos where they have to scream over the microphone, and you're not going to get that reaction, unfortunately. Instead, it's just going to be orchestrated one that Vince and his team come up with.
Yep. But yeah, I am looking forward though to the days when we actually can go back to a live event, and I am going to look forward to that. So that's all the time we have for this month's show. If you're into the Twitter, you follow the show with AllTheMark86. I want to thank 86 Productions for hosting and editing the podcast, and I want to thank all of our listeners for taking the time to download and listen to the show. And for Roger Cave, Doug Hunt, and Aaron Hughes, I am Andrew Hughes, and until next time, we'll see you in the ring.